Hello everybody. In this tutorial I will introduce and explain how you can use the Paul Jensen FutureLab Leiden's Questions Optimizing Calculator. You can use this tool to optimize the development of novel medical interventions, such as medicines, medical devices, and medical nutrition. We have developed this calculator as a simplified and practical version of a more complex decision analysis. The calculator is designed to determine optimal development routes of novel medical interventions, giving a number of key questions. These questions need to be answered before the intervention can be successfully introduced in the clinic and revenues can be generated. You can see there are 4 stages or tabs to walk through, starting with the Settings tab. In the Settings tab, you determine your development limits. In this course, we are primarily interested in critical development path finding. The distribution of costs and success rates defines the path. The exact absolute revenue figures are less relevant, as long as it outweighs the cumulative costs. Entering realistic revenue and cost estimations will, of course, generate more realistic risk-adjusted project values. Set the overall limits for costs and success rates for the question optimizing calculator to take into consideration. If you're done setting your preferences and limits, continue to the next step, determining the questions. The number of key questions this tool can analyze ranges from 1 to 6. Each key question has a probability of success, or success rate, and associated cost needed to address the question in studies. Estimating success rates is not an exact science, but the result of group discussions, historical data, or just your best guess. Remember, the tool merely helps you prioritize the defined scientific questions based on how you allocate development risks. First, click the pencil symbol to begin editing a question. Next, after determining the subject and naming the question, you need to define the success rate and associated estimated costs needed to do the research that will lead to an answer of this question. Use the sliders or type in values directly. Clicking on the trash can deletes a question. The plus sign allows you to add one. All done? Continue to the next tab, Validation. This tab shows you the combined outcome of the input in the previous Questions tab. 2 things are possible upon arriving in the Validation tab. 1. The limits match the ones you set in the Settings tab exactly, or you selected no limits, meaning you can continue to the Output tab straight away. Or 2. Your limits and values need adjusting. You will almost always have to tweak your numbers a little bit to get the outcome you need, to generate an output that matches the limits you entered in the Settings tab. If, for instance, the sum of the costs of all your key questions do not add up to the total research budget, you will need to adjust your values. You can now choose to either manually or auto-adjust your values. Auto-adjust is a convenient way to proportionally adjust the values to meet the limits. If you want, you can also choose to manually adjust your values. Let's say we let auto-adjust alter the values. If you feel like excluding certain values from being altered, you can do so by checking the boxes next to the costs or success rate for each question. If you're done checking boxes, click Continue to see the changes auto-adjust made for you. What just happened? AutoAdjust changed the numbers to match your settings. The ratio stayed the same, but the combined input of success rates and costs now matches the overall values in the Settings tab. Now let's try to manually change the values to match the overall values. The level of required adjustment is shown in 2 separate graphs, one for success rate and one for costs. You can adjust the values below the graphs. If you've successfully edited all values through manual or auto-adjust, you're ready to continue to the Output tab. In the last and final stage of the Paul Jensen FutureLab Leiden Question Optimizing Calculator, you can customize the output report. You can choose, for instance, to include the second best optimal path or a path of your choosing in the output file. This user-defined route allows you to choose fixed positions for one or more questions. The Question Optimizing Calculator will calculate and include the best route given these user-defined fixed positions. Lastly, you have the option to include risk graphs with values and to include a decision tree. Click Generate File to create your report. It will open in a new window. The generated output file is a PDF document, allowing you to easily save the file and share it with anyone. At first glance, the report seems challenging, but if you look closely, you'll find all your questions and data are there. The report is a handy visual aid as it shows you snapshots of the generated risk profiles and allows you to compare multiple sequences and paths. The first page of the output file lists the input you've provided in the Settings and Questions tab. It shows the description of the questions with keywords, currency, development limits, and all other input values. On page 2, the selected output is displayed, starting with the optimal route. The optimal sequence of questions to be addressed is displayed by keyword. Below the sequence, the risk-adjusted project value is given. That value is explained in the outcome table. If you deduct all possible outcomes in the last column of the table from the scenario in which development is successful, the bottom row, you get the risk-adjusted project value. The graph showing the risk profile is simply a visual representation of the table. Since you're likely to be most interested in the negative values of this risk profile, that graph is also added. This one basically zooms in on all possible outcomes but leaves out successful development. The report continues with an optionally added decision tree, showing the optimal development path. Here you clearly see how, in every step of the sequence, there is a choice to be made. Do we continue or abandon development? And if so, what are the consequences? The numbers for each decision, of course, match the ones in the outcome table. If you chose to include the second best route and/or a user-defined route, these will follow in this report. The report is concluded with summarizing the key findings, allowing you to quickly compare multiple paths by looking at their sequences and risk-adjusted project values. These are then finally portrayed in a combined risk profile. I hope this helps you to use this tool throughout the rest of the course and in your daily professional work. We've tried to make it as easy as possible to apply real option theory to clinical development. Don't worry too much about estimating the input values. There is no right or wrong. This calculator forces you to be explicit rather than implicit about risks. It does not improve the success rate for your compound, but rather allows you to optimally deal with the intrinsic development risk of novel medical interventions.